Hey, my friend, welcome back to the channel. If you're a true Cowboys fan, you already know we live and breathe this team every single day of the year. And even though it's the off-season, the rumors just won't slow down. Today, we're diving into trade talks that have lit up the fan base, with names like Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Pitts making waves, and yes, even a flat-out laughable suggestion involving Tyler Smith. But before we dive into that, let me ask you something real quick. Do you think the Cowboys will make another trade before Week 1? Hit the comments right now and type 1 for yes, 0 for no. I'll be checking to see what you think. Now, here's why all this talk even matters. Stephen Jones recently made it crystal clear that the Cowboys might not be done adding talent. He said something that should stick in your mind. 365 days a year is player acquisition. That's not just a throwaway line, that's a hint, a subtle, calculated warning shot that they're still looking for the right deal. And think about it. We've already seen a more aggressive approach this offseason, moving up in the draft, trading for guys like Joe Milton, Kenneth Murray, and George Pickens. That's not the same old conservative front office we've been used to. But here's the catch. The Cowboys aren't just going to pull the trigger for the sake of headlines. They're watching closely, evaluating every position during OTAs and training camp. And when that moment comes, when the right player becomes available, they want to be ready. So buckle up, because we're going to break down every big name being floated around right now. But first, tell me in the comments, what position do you think still needs help the most? Cornerback, tight end, or offensive line? Let's kick things off with the biggest name on the list, Jalen Ramsey. All right, let's talk about the name that has Cowboys Twitter going absolutely wild, Jalen Ramsey. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't Ramsey coming off an injury? Isn't he older? Sure. But let's not act like he isn't still one of the best cornerbacks in the league when healthy. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time first-team All-Pro, and just last year he was locking down receivers before that knee issue. You put him opposite Trevon Diggs with Daron Bland in the slot, that secondary would be flat-out terrifying. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Ramsey is expensive. The Dolphins would have to eat a chunk of his salary unless the Cowboys wanted to do some major cap gymnastics. Still, Stephen Jones did say they're open to 365 days a year of adding players. So if Ramsey ends up being a cap casualty, or if Miami just wants to move on, Dallas could swoop in. Let me ask you this. Would you be okay with the Cowboys trading a third-round pick and eating $8 million to land Ramsey for the next 2 years? Type yes or no in the comments, and tell me why. There's also a leadership angle here. Ramsey's the kind of guy who brings swagger, intensity, and playoff experience. And let's be honest, this Cowboys team has lacked that in crunch-time games. Bringing in a vet like Ramsey could be the mental edge this defense needs. Now, does it feel like a long shot? Maybe. But when you look at what the Cowboys gave up for Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore in past years, it's clear this front office is willing to go after big names, if the price is right. Still, Ramsey's not the only name out there drawing buzz. In fact, the next player we need to talk about might be even more intriguing because of his age, upside, and how he could fit in this offense. Yep, I'm talking about Kyle Pitts. But before we get into that, here's a poll for you. Who would help this team more in 2025, Jalen Ramsey or Kyle Pitts? Vote in the comments and let's keep this debate going. Now let's get into the name that's been causing even more noise than Ramsey, Kyle Pitts. And let me just say it. This one is wild, but also kind of exciting, right? Pitts is still just 24 years old, and he was the number 4 overall pick in 2021. As a rookie, he went over 1,000 yards and looked like the next great tight end in the league. But ever since then, he's been stuck in that dysfunctional Falcons offense with bad quarterback play and even worse play calling. So naturally, people are starting to wonder, is it time for him to get a fresh start? Now here's where it gets interesting for us. The Cowboys love tight ends. They spent a second-round pick on Luke. Schoonmaker, they have Jake Ferguson developing into a really solid option. But Pitts? Pitts is a different breed. He's basically a wide receiver in a tight end's body. You put him in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb drawing attention on one side and Brandon Cooks stretching the field, it could unlock a whole new level for this offense. But let's slow down a second and look at the reality. If Atlanta is listening to offers, and that's still an if, you better believe they'll want a significant return. Probably a second-round pick, maybe more. So here's your question. Would you give up a second-rounder for Kyle Pitts, knowing he's on a cheap deal for one more year and has that fifth-year option? Let me know in the comments. Also, think about this. Dak Prescott loves throwing to tight ends in the red zone. That's been true for years. Imagine a 6'6", 245-pound mismatch nightmare with 4.4 speed working the middle of the field. Pitts might be the one guy who could actually take this offense from good to scary. And let's not forget, Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer haven't exactly lit up the scoreboard recently. Pitts could be that missing spark. All right, now that we've talked about two big-time stars, let's switch gears. Because not every trade rumor is about flash. Some are about need, and the Cowboys might be eyeing help in the trenches. All right, let's shift the focus to something way less flashy, but maybe even more important, the trenches. Because let's be real, the Cowboys still have some serious question marks on both the offensive and defensive lines. Let's start with the offensive side. After losing Tyron Smith to the Jets and relying on a first-round rookie in Tyler Guyton, there's some understandable nervousness. Not to mention, the depth behind the starters isn't exactly proven. That's why a name like Charles Leno Jr. has popped up in rumors. He's not a superstar, but he's a solid veteran tackle who can start in a pinch and give you quality snaps. If Guyton isn't quite ready, Leno would be a smart insurance policy. Plus, he's still available and wouldn't cost a draft pick. Now flip it to the other side, defensive line. The Cowboys have Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and some young guys like Marshawn Kneeland and Viliami Fehoko Jr., but what they're missing is that true run-stuffing presence in the middle, especially with Jonathan Hankins gone. That's where someone like DJ Reader or even Linval Joseph could come in. Big-bodied veterans who can clog up the middle and let your linebackers flow free. Reader might be out of the Cowboys' price range, but if they get creative with cap space, don't rule it out. Let me ask you this. Would you rather the Cowboys go after a veteran O-lineman or D-lineman? Tell me in the comments and vote in the poll right here on the screen. It's a tough call, but both areas need attention if this team wants to be taken seriously in January. And keep this in mind, too. Will McClay and the front office have made late off-season moves before. Think back to guys like Anthony Barr or Jason Peters. They love finding that affordable vet who can step in without breaking the bank. So whether it's trenches, tight ends, or trade buzz, there's clearly movement behind the scenes. And the closer we get to training camp, the hotter the stove will get. Now let's wrap this all up and talk about what it actually means for the Cowboys front office and their mindset. So here's the bottom line, my friend. The pressure is on. The Cowboys didn't make the big splash in free agency. They didn't go all in during the draft. And now, with June right around the corner, this front office is standing at a crossroads. Do they continue to sit back and trust the process? Or do they finally step up and aggressively fill the obvious holes on this roster? Because let's be honest, we've seen this movie before. Loads of regular season wins, tons of talent on paper, and then heartbreak in January. Again, if something doesn't change in how this team prepares in the offseason, why should we expect a different result? But what do you think? Will the Cowboys make one more big move before training camp? Drop your take in the comments, vote in the final poll, and let's keep this conversation going. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more updates like this every week, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow. I'll catch you in the next one. But until then, you know the drill. Go Cowboys.